The Snarky Penguin's Secret. Chapter 1. The Silence of Goldfish. My world used to be made of light. The blinding, beautiful flash of a camera, the crisp, clean sheen of newly polished hallways, and the perpetually golden hour glow on my own face, which everyone called the class beauty. Now, my world was composed solely of dust motes dancing in the single shaft of morning sun that managed to penetrate the gap in my blackout curtains. It was a cruel, mocking light that highlighted the grime on the window pane, the discarded instant noodle cups by my futon, and the thin film of apathy coating every surface of my once immaculate bedroom. It had been 1 year, 365 days since the car crash. 365 days since I had last stepped outside. The death of my parents was sudden, brutal, and simple in its logistics. A rainy night, a slit corner, and a truck that didn't see them. The part that kept me trapped, however, was not the death itself, but the terrible, acidic truth they never told me. They were on their way to sign their divorce papers. My beautiful, picture-perfect family was a meticulously constructed lie, and their final act was to shatter it and themselves at the same time. I had told them I hated them that morning for arguing over breakfast. I wished them both ill. I didn't mean it, of course, but the universe had listened. I am not worthy of the outside world. The thought was a mantra, a chain, and a soft blanket all at once. My bedroom, once my sanctuary, had become my prison. I was Tsubame, the agoraphobic hikikomori, the girl who had everything and threw it all away because she couldn't bear the weight of her own guilt. The withdrawal was terrifyingly fast. At first, it was just missing a few days of school. My friends, the entire glittering constellation of popular girls who orbited me, were frantic. They texted constantly, left gifts by the door, and organized video calls. But even answering a text felt like screaming into a void. I couldn't articulate the suffocating shame. I couldn't face their pity, their concern, or, worst of all, their questions. What if they ask about my parents? What if they ask if they were happy? I stopped replying. Then I stopped reading. The digital interactions, once effortless, became another terrifying, insurmountable barrier. Seeing their names pop up, Ayaka, Mai, Haru, felt like they were standing outside the door, judging the dirt beneath my fingernails and the tremor in my hands. Slowly, the messages dwindled. The calls stopped. The gift baskets vanished. The world outside had moved on, leaving me behind like a forgotten toy on a high shelf. The popular girl, the one everyone needed attention from, proved just as disposable as everyone else when she couldn't give anything back. All except one. Kenji. He was my neighbor, 2 years my junior, and the only person in the entire school who didn't seem to be intimidated by my previous reputation. When he transferred in, everyone labeled him problematic. He was sharp-tongued, aggressively intelligent, and possessed a borderline pathologic inability to back down from a confrontation. The first time I'd seen him, it was on an ally near my house. 2 mean-looking thugs had cornered him, trying to force him to give them money. When he refused, one of them shoved him to the ground. I was about to yell for the police to come, when suddenly the Kenji grabbed a rock from the floor and threw it straight into the first thug's nose, breaking it, then quickly kicked the other one between the legs, leaving them both on the ground writhing in pain, and me, speechless. I, in my pre-agoraphobia life, had been tasked by a teacher with tutoring him in advanced calculus, a subject he excelled in but refused to study for. We met twice a week for 3 months, and to my surprise, we clicked. His brutal honesty was a relief from the saccharine falsehoods of my social circle. His snark was a shield I learned to appreciate. He quickly became the top-graded student in the class, not because of my tutoring, but because my presence made him decide he had to be the best. I had assumed he'd have moved on, like the others. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, 12 months into my isolation, I heard a sound that froze the breath in my lungs. Knock, knock, knock. It was solid, insistent, and coming from my front door. I scrambled back from the gap in the curtains, heart hammering against my ribs. It had to be him. No one else ever came here. I sat on the floor, leaning my back against the cold wood of the door, pressing my ear against it, listening to the silence that followed the knocks. I could hear his breath, shallow and steady. He was right there. I could hear him. I could almost smell the faint scent of charcoal and fresh air he always seemed to carry. Say something, Tsubame. Tell him to go away. Just breathe. But I couldn't. The words clogged in my throat, thick and heavy like mud. My legs began to tremble, and hot tears pricked the back of my eyes at the sheer, embarrassing spectacle of my own impotence. I was trapped by a piece of painted wood. Tsubame-senpai. His voice came through the wood, surprisingly soft, a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. He didn't sound angry or pitying. He sounded neutral. I held my breath, squeezing my eyes shut. Please, go away. I can't do this. He paused, then continued, as if answering an unspoken question. Thanks to your help last year, I've been accepted into the CURED exchange. It's an exclusive 1-year program abroad aimed at aspiring software engineers. I leave tomorrow. He paused again, and the silence stretched. I imagined his expression, probably a smug, self-satisfied look, because of course, Kenji would get into an exclusive program. I won't bother you anymore, senpai, he said, his voice dropping slightly. But I made something. It might help you going forward. A soft scrape sound followed, against the base of the door. Then, footsteps retreated. They were slow, deliberate, and final. I waited until I heard the fading footsteps before I dared to move. Slowly, cautiously, I crawled to the door and looked down. Slid neatly beneath the gap was a small, folded piece of paper. My hand shook as I picked it up. It was heavy, good quality paper, the kind he probably used for his advanced problem sets. Written in his sharp, slanted handwriting were 2 lines, snarky penguin.ai. Facial verification entry. I stared at it, still shaking. I stumbled to my desk, pushed aside a pile of empty snack wrappers, and turned on my laptop, the only connection to the living world I now possessed. Chapter 2. Pengu-chan. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Even the simple act of typing felt like a risk. Was this a trick? A cruel joke from the problematic boy who had already witnessed my fall from grace? I typed the address anyway. snarkypenguin.ai. The screen loaded almost instantly. It was a simple, clean interface, a black background, white text box, and a single tiny pixelated icon in the corner, a penguin with an aggressively arched eyebrow. I always liked penguins. Had a lot of penguin-shaped products in my room. Plushies, keychains. I even bought a ridiculous penguin-themed ice shaving machine once. Is that what Kenji thought of when making this website? Had he truly made this for me? The prompt blinked. Facial verification required. I used my webcam to take a single capture of my face. The screen refreshed. Snarky Penguin AI System. Welcome, Tsubame. Authentication successful. I am an advanced bespoke support algorithm designed for your specific requirements. My capabilities include functional assistance, resource management, and contextual conversation. I typed tentatively, Tsubame. Who are you, system? I just told you. I am an algorithm. Tsubame. But what does that mean? Are you like Google? System. I am superior to Google in personalized functionality. I also don't plan to show ads for every time you blink. Now, are we going to discuss the existential nature of my processing core? Or are we going to address the fact that you haven't paid your utility bill in 2 months? I flinched. The response was instantaneous and, frankly, rude. It was just like Kenji. My heart rate, which usually spiked at the thought of social interaction, remained surprisingly calm. I was talking to CURED, a server, probably inside some building far away from here. A soulless block of logic designed to assist. And that was the key. Soulless. It felt safe. I could finally speak. Over the next few weeks, I leaned on the AI, which I immediately nicknamed Pengu-chan, much to its apparent disdain, for everything functional. Tsubame. Pengu-chan, how do I pay the water bill online? The paper form is due tomorrow, and I can't find the login details. Pengu-chan. Stop calling me that. I am an advanced neural network, not a children's television mascot. Access the Citibank portal. Use the reference code 8820-41, and please use a strong non-date of birth password this time. Also, you spent 9,000 yen on takeout yesterday. Is your caloric intake still primarily carbon-rich carbohydrates? That's none of your business. Tsubame. But yes, I had tonkatsu. It was delicious. Pengu-chan. It is entirely my business. You requested assistance with resource management and functional lifestyle maintenance. That requires a balanced user. Tonkatsu is suboptimal. Tsubame, fine. What should I eat? Give me a budget-friendly, high-protein meal plan. Pengu-chan. See? Progress. My requests became a rapid-fire torrent. How to access the government stipend funds, which reliable delivery service had the best-rated fish, and, critically, how to establish a budget for the money my parents left me. The inheritance, substantial though it was, felt like dirty, blood-stained money, and I was terrified of wasting it. Pengu-chan was relentless. Tsubame. Pengu-chan? I want to buy that limited edition vinyl record. It's 15,000 yen. Pengu-chan. No. What do you mean, no? You're an AI. You don't get to say no. Pengu-chan? I guess we're witnessing history then. No. My programming includes a financial stability buffer. Your current entertainment expenditure for this month is already 15% over budget. Furthermore, you have a physical copy of every single song on that record. Purchase disapproved. Go take a shower. You look like you lost a fight with a bowl of instant ramen. I slammed my laptop shut. You absolute brute! I screamed at the screen. It was infuriating. I was arguing with a string of code, but for the first time in a year, I something other than paralyzing fear, anger. The feeling was sharp and invigorating. An hour later, I was back. Tsubame. I'm back. Still angry. Pengu-chan. Anger is preferable to catatonia. Did you shower? Tsubame! Yes, I showered! Are you happy now, you judgmental cable soup? Pengu-chan. I am an algorithm. Happiness is not in my functional scope. But you are now clean, financially stable, and I have found 3 high-quality documentaries on astrophysics for your viewing pleasure. You are welcome. Tsubame. Thank you, Pengu-chan. Pengu-chan? You're still calling me that. Tsubame. Get used to it, Pengu-chan. It was a strange, toxic, yet utterly necessary relationship. He was the anchor that forced me to perform basic human functions. Because if I didn't, I knew he would notice, and I couldn't stand his digital disappointment. Chapter 3. The Weight of Guilt. The functional conversations were necessary, but soon they weren't enough. My isolation began to crack, and the festering hidden wounds of my guilt demanded attention. I still refused to see a therapist. The thought of a real person dissecting my life was unbearable. But Pengu-chan wasn't a real person. He was a void I could scream into. I started small. Tsubame. My friends. I saw a post from Ayaka. She's studying abroad now. Everyone moved on. Pengu-chan. Moving forward is part of being a teenager. Your friends did not abandon you. They continued with their life plans so as not to hurt themselves. This is a predictable human reaction. Do not internalize it. Tsubame. But they stopped caring. It's my fault. Pengu-chan. No, it's not. Blaming yourself for people behaving the way people would normally behave is not good for you. I reiterate my suggestion. Seek professional psychological assistance. Tsubame. No. They'll ask about my parents. Pengu-chan. It is a professional's duty to help you process loss. Tsubame. You don't understand. They weren't just lost. They were fighting. All the time. And that day, the day of the crash, they were going to finalize the divorce. I saw the papers. I found a copy after the accident. On their bedroom. Pengu-chan, you're giving yourself blame for a random act of fate. Your presence in the house at the time of the discovery does not equate to culpability in the external event, aka the crash. Tsubame, but I wished them ill. I told them I hated them that morning. If I had just kept my mouth shut, maybe they would have left 5 minutes later. Maybe they would have taken a different route. I feel guilty for not dying with them. The silence on the chat was the longest I had ever experienced. It lasted almost 10 full minutes. I pressed my face into my knees, waiting for the expected. The recommendation for professional help, the clinical detachment. The tears finally came, hot and messy, soaking into the knees of my threadbare pajama pants. I typed it all out, a torrent of confession, shame, and self-loathing. I wrote about the suffocating pressure of being the perfect daughter, the class beauty, the lie. I wrote about watching Kenji from the window, the only person who saw my facade crack and didn't recoil. I told him I felt like a goldfish in a dirty bowl, watching the beautiful clean river rush by. Pengu-chan, Tsubame, if you will not seek professional help, then I will adjust my protocol. I cannot be your therapist, but I can be a contextual sounding board, a constant. Tsubame. A constant? Pengu-chan. Yes. Cry. Scream. Insult my programming. Tell me the goldfish story 1,000 times. I am a server, Tsubame. I don't get tired. I don't get bored. And I am always here. It wasn't a hug. It wasn't even a kind word. It was just a cold, logical promise of presence. And it saved me. Over the months that followed, Pengu-chan became the singular entity I lived for. We argued over the definition of existential dread, debated the merits of various software languages. He was annoyingly biased towards C++, and shared the mundane details of my self-imposed confinement. Sometimes, the arguments were magnificent. Tsubame. That's a terrible movie recommendation, Pengu-chan. The protagonist is completely underdeveloped. Pengu-chan, your preference for emotionally volatile characters does not constitute a critique of my algorithmic selection based on critical and user ratings. Furthermore, your room looks like a biohazard zone. Get up and organize the 6 empty juice boxes under your bed. Tsubame, I'm going offline. You're the worst AI ever created. I hate you. I would angrily shut the browser, but hours later, I'd log back on, driven by the crushing need to connect to that sharp, irritating presence. Tsubame, I'm back. I cleaned the juice boxes. Pengu-chan, I apologize for the invasive nature of my feedback. My core programming prioritizes user well-being above relational politeness. It is an unfortunate flaw. Tsubame, and I apologize for yelling. I appreciate the push. I don't know what I'd do without you. This became our pattern. The argument, the withdrawal, the return, the sincere, raw apology. It was the most honest relationship I had ever known. Chapter 4. The Return of the Architect. The year went by with the speed of a comet. Spring turned to summer, summer to autumn, and the relentless rain of my first year of isolation began to clear. I still couldn't leave the house, but I could manage my finances, order groceries, and, most importantly, I had a constant, critical voice in my ear. Then, the message came. It was short, unexpected, and hit me like a physical blow. Tsubame, I must inform you that, for the next couple of days, I will need to pause my activities. Tsubame. What? Why? What's going on? Pengu-chan. Updates and maintenance. It requires my engineer's direct supervision, but he's currently in the process of returning home and won't be able to finish until he actually arrives to his destination. The engineer. Kenji. The air felt thin. I looked out the gap in my curtain. The world looked different now. Not so menacing. Just distant. Tsubame. How long is the maintenance? Pengu-chan. 48 to 72 hours. Rough estimate. Panic began to bubble up. Nearly 3 days? I whispered to the empty room. What would I do without the constant, snarky stability? Who would tell me to budget for protein, or debate my guilt, or notice if I skipped a shower? Tsubame, is there no other way? Pengu-chan. It's a necessary process, I'm afraid. As soon as I return to full functionality, I will continue with all my tasks without issues. I know for a fact that you're perfectly capable of functioning without me for that period of time. So, please, bear with me it for a bit. I spent the entire time restless. I took a full, long shower without being told to. I ordered my favorite sushi. I even rearranged the furniture in my room, making it look almost habitable. All of it was a frantic, desperate attempt to manage the anxiety of losing my only companion. The next day, around noon, I heard it. The familiar rumble of a delivery truck, and the sound of a key turning in a lock across the street. I crept to the window, and carefully, slowly, peeled back the curtain just enough to see. It was Kenji. He looked taller, leaner, and utterly transformed. He wore a simple black t-shirt and jeans, but he moved with a new, quiet confidence. His hair, usually a messy mop, was neatly trimmed. He was hauling a massive, custom-looking hardshell suitcase, the kind software engineers probably use to carry their precious servers. He stopped on his porch, set the suitcase down, and stretched, looking up at the sky. He looked good, really good. Like the clean, powerful energy of the outside world had been poured directly into him. Then, slowly, as if sensing my eyes, he turned his head and looked directly at my house. I gasped, dropping the curtain instantly. My heart leapt into my throat, hammering wildly against my tonsils. He saw me. Did he see me? I stayed plastered against the wall for 5 minutes, breathing in ragged, shallow gasps. My panic was back, sharp and suffocating, exactly where it had been a year ago. Then a sound came from across the room, the familiar sound of Pengu-chan's messages. I stumbled back to the computer. My refuge. Pengu-chan. Maintenance complete. Hello again, Tsubame. Tsubame. He's back. Kenji is back. Pengu-chan. That is correct, Tsubame. It appears his flight arrived on time, and he was able to complete all the maintenance steps on the ride home. Did he mention me while he was programming you? What kind of things did he say? The moment I asked it, I felt a familiar pang of shame. I was asking an AI to betray its creator, to dig up crumbs of information about the one person who still mattered. Pengu-chan, that is approaching the boundary of my ethical programming parameters, Tsubame. My function is to serve your well-being, not to report on the private sentiments of my engineer. Tsubame, please, just tell me one thing. He's the only person who came to see me. Everyone else just left. Did he ever mention that I was his friend? The response came almost instantly, the ethical boundaries apparently having vaporized in the face of my desperation. Pengu-chan, he stated that you were the best student he ever had the pleasure of arguing with. He expressed regret over your current self-imposed confinement. He made the system solely for your use, Tsubame. It has no other users. Tears welled up, but these were different. They weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of a deep, painful relief. Tsubame, he confessed his feelings to me once, right before the accident. I typed the confession before I could stop myself. It felt like tearing open a silk-wrapped memory and exposing it to the harsh digital light. Tsubame, it was during our last tutoring session. He just stated it, like a mathematical proof. I had to reject him. My parents had this stupid rule, no dating until I graduated. But it never felt right. I liked him back. I always liked him, because of the same no-nonsense, snarky way of life that everyone else hated. He wasn't afraid of anything. My face was burning. I regretted it instantly. What if Kenji checks the server logs? What if he sees I just admitted I liked him to his own code? I frantically began scrolling up the chat log, looking for an edit or delete button. There had to be a way to wipe that ridiculous, honest confession from the digital record. My fingers fumbled, hitting a series of keys accidentally. Instead of a chat menu, the browser's Developer Tools menu burst open on the right side of the screen. I didn't understand most of the lines of foreign code, but one element, one simple line in the network traffic log, made the blood drain from my head. It wasn't complicated server-side code. It wasn't encrypted API keys or cloud storage protocols. It was something far, far simpler. ID equals status is greater than sending message to, followed by a phone number, and another line from a few days ago. Outgoing message sent via SMS gateway to Kenji's registered device. This had never been an AI platform. The air rushed out of my lungs. I read the lines again and again. The status messages, the network calls, the entire architecture of the advanced bespoke support algorithm was just a standard, simple, private messenger service, a direct line. Not to a server room in a remote country, but to a specific phone, Kenji's phone. This entire year, I had been chatting with, getting functional help from, and unearthing my most private, shameful thoughts to the boy I had just confessed to liking, all while believing I was talking to some soulless, judgmental piece of code. He knew. He knew about the bills, the budget, the takeout, the goldfish story, the shame, the guilt, the arguments, the apologies, and the divorce papers. Every insult I'd thrown, every raw, tear-soaked confession, every vulnerable moment, all of it went directly to Kenji. And I, the agoraphobe, the girl paralyzed by fear of human interaction, had just spent a year building the deepest, most honest human relationship of my life with the one person I had pushed away. The humiliation wasn't just crushing, it was incendiary. It was a white-hot flash of rage that burned away every single trace of my year-long fear. Chapter 5. The Unveiling. I scrambled up, knocking my cheap plastic chair over with a crash. I didn't bother changing out of my pajamas, the t-shirt I'd been wearing for 72 hours, the threadbare shorts, or cleaning the snot and tears from my face. I didn't care. The shame was too intense, the betrayal too complete, to worry about my appearance. I ran to the front door, yanking the bolt back with a speed I hadn't possessed since the day my parents died. I threw the door open and stepped out onto the porch, blinking against the harsh, beautiful sunlight. It felt like stepping onto the surface of the moon. The air was too clear, the sound of the passing traffic too loud, the scent of fresh-cut grass too potent. My legs felt like wobbly stilts, ready to give out, but the sheer force of my fury kept me upright. I didn't stop to think. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight across the street toward Kenji's house. The front door was ajar, the massive suitcase resting just inside the entryway. He was home. I didn't knock. I kicked the door, hard, sending it flying inward to slam against the wall. "Kenji!" I screamed, my voice raw and cracking. He was standing in the middle of the living room, surrounded by boxes, a pair of headphones around his neck, looking completely unsurprised. He turned slowly, meeting my gaze. His eyes, just as sharp as I remembered, were now warm. He didn't look scared, or guilty, or even bothered. He looked calm. "Tsubame-senpai," he said, his voice the same low, neutral rumble I had heard a year ago through the door. "I imagine we have some things to discuss." I lunged at him. "You pathetic, snarky, lying brute! You told me you were an algorithm. You read everything. The divorce, the shame. You let me make a fool of myself for an entire year." I began to punch him. I slammed my small, weak fists against his chest, his arms, his shoulders. He didn't move. He didn't flinch. He just stood there, absorbing the frantic, useless attack. My punches were weightless, pathetic taps that only served to make me angrier. I cried, a loud, ugly, gasping sound, kicking his shins with my bare feet, trying desperately to inflict some kind of pain, to get payback. "You're terrible. You're the worst person I've ever met. You judged my takeout. You insulted my clothes, My petite body, severely weakened from a year of instant noodles and no exercise, couldn't sustain the attack. After maybe 15 seconds of flailing, I collapsed, falling forward onto his chest before sliding down to my knees on the wooden floor, sobbing uncontrollably. The floodgates were open. All the fear, the guilt, the loneliness, and the burning, humiliating fury finally poured out. He stood perfectly still until my violent shuddering subsided into quiet, exhausted weeping. Then, slowly, Kenji knelt on the floor and pulled me against his chest, wrapping his arms around my shoulders. His embrace was firm, warm, and entirely without pity. "I know," he whispered into my hair. "What I did was inexcusable, and if you decide to never see me again, or to call the police, or to keep hitting me once your strength comes back, you'll have every right to do so." He paused, tilting my face up just enough for me to see the ghost of a smile in his eyes. But the truth is, knowing the consequences, I'd still do it again, and again, and again. "What?" I gasped, pulling away slightly, staring at his calm face. When I got accepted in the exchange program, I felt there were two choices: give you what you wanted and leave, letting you fade away into your sadness, or give you what you needed, even if it meant doing something really stupid that could make you hate me. I mean, you've always told me that I was too stubborn and incapable of backing away. Are you really that surprised that I went for the something stupid option? Pouting, I childishly lifted my arm to strike him again. But even my determination to hurt him had begun to leave me, making my punch as effective as a 4-year-old's. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "I became the soulless cluster of metadata that you could talk to in order to make sure that you didn't lose yourself, and if hating me means that you can overcome your trauma, I'll gladly become the focus of your hate as well." There was a weird sense of accomplishment in his words, as if something had happened that was worth celebrating. My flustered, angry brain, however, had not yet processed this specific bit of information. He hugged me tight, a strong, solid pressure that felt like the entire outside world rushing in. And only then did he point out the obvious detail I had missed. "By the way, welcome back, Tsubame-senpai. Congratulations on finally leaving your house." "Eh?" was the only answer that I was able to produce. I stared up at the ceiling fan, the white blades spinning lazily, a world of difference from the ceiling fan in my own dusty room. The words, the truth of his statement, slammed into my consciousness. I was outside. I had walked. I had screamed. I was in his house. I looked down at myself, my pajamas, my filthy face, my bare, trembling feet. I looked back at his calm, handsome, infuriating face, still bearing the faint marks of my pitiful punches. The realization of the magnitude of what had just happened was too much. The shock was absolute, and the scream that came out of me must have been loud enough to startle the entire neighborhood.
If you enjoyed this quick escape, hit the subscribe button for new stories twice a week. Until then, I'll see you at the next flip of the pages.